Warning: contains somewhat mature content, including language, brief violence, and mild sexual themes, and may not be suitable for people under age 14.
Finally, the bus stopped at my stop. I got off as quickly as I could, looking forward to a nice shower, some dinner, and then bed. I usually have a problem getting to sleep, so I go to bed around 7 to make sure I actually get enough sleep to keep me awake all the next day. I went into my room after entering the house. My room was cleaner than it usually is. My mother must have cleaned it today. I'm not a slob. I'm just not comfortable unless I have a little bit of clutter. My mom, however, is a clean freak. My dad thinks she's obsessive-compulsive. The walls of my room were a light blue, which I didn't choose. I also didn't choose my white bedspread and pillows or the Catholic crosses hanging on my wall. The only things that I did choose to be in there were my CDs, CD player, bookshelf filled with books, and a wooden box that held my shell collection. I know what you must be thinking, but I'm very proud of my shell collection. I found very ornate shells in my lifetime, and of all different shapes, sizes, and colors. My favorite shells, however, are the ones that came from the gastropods, such as snails. Most of them are swirled and twisted very beautifully, and I admire them for that. My mother thinks I'm a freak. I set down my backpack and stuff and pulled off my shirt, getting ready for a shower. I went to my dresser to get some clothes to sleep in when I saw on my bookshelf a little red book. I pulled it out, and a cloud of dust followed it. I realized it was a journal I had received for my 4th birthday. I had only written in it once, then put it in the bookshelf and never touched it again. I opened it and read the first page.
Dear Journal, it's my birthday today. Will you be my friend?
It made me smile. I was so little, I barely knew how to spell. I didn't have friends then either, so I was hoping the journal would fill that space. I think I had stopped writing in it because I was disappointed when it wouldn't write back to me. Having thought about that, I laughed. I was contemplating writing in it now, but decided not to, and just set it on the floor. Maybe tomorrow. The next day I got ready for school as usual. I'm not a morning person, so my mornings are quite uneventful. I ride the bus in the morning as well as in the afternoon. Luckily this morning I ended up in a seat all by myself. Lionel was invading some cheerleader's personal space in the back. I got to school and walked around for a bit like I usually do, waiting for the first bell to ring. I have nothing else better to do every day at school. Finally it rang and I made my way down the hall to the boys' locker room. I went in and over to my locker, quickly doing the combination and opening it. I took my shirt off to get dressed into my PE uniform, but as I pulled my shirt over my head, I felt 2 very cold hands touch the skin on my abdomen. I jumped, gasped, and looked around. Rain stood in front of me, smiling.
"It's cold outside,"
he said, amused. I blushed hard.
"Did I scare you?"
I nodded. "Yes, now my heart is racing." "Thanks," I said, trying to sound angry, but my voice had cracked again. In truth, I don't think my heart was beating quickly from the scare, but I don't know why else it would. Rain chuckled and took my shirt from my hands, tossing it into my locker. He warmed up his hands with his breath for a moment, then placed one of them over my heart. However fast it had been going, it was nothing compared to how fast it was going now. His hands weren't even cold anymore. Rain watched me for a moment.
"Funny,"
he said.
"It just now sped up. Are my hands still cold?"
I shook my head, sure that my face was scarlet again. Rain smiled.
I wonder if it's because I'm touching you."
I gasped and pulled away, grabbing my PE shirt. "What are you implying?" I asked coldly. "I don't have friends, Rain. I'm a very shy person. Since you're the first person to actually be nice to me, I'm like, super shy." Rain laughed.
"Super shy, huh?"
He smiled at me and went to his own locker. I held my PE shirt to my chest and leaned against my locker door, taking deep breaths, my eyes closed. I was wondering if I was getting sick or something because I felt very hot again and kind of sick to my stomach. I finally finished getting dressed and left the locker room to go to the gym. Rain caught up with me, and he looked like he was going to talk, but Nate grabbed his arm and pulled him back. I overheard Nate say something about baseball tickets. When we got into the gym, Mr. Frey had us run around the perimeter of it for a few minutes, then sent our teams to a court. My team had learned during the year not to pass to me because of 2 reasons. One, I don't really move that fast, so whenever I try to pass, the ball always gets stolen from me before I even turn to the person I plan passing to. Two, no matter how close I am to the basket, I can't make it in. I'm pathetic. However, Rain, being new to the team and all, didn't know any better and kept passing to me. Nate was furious. "Rain, stop it! He can't play for crap! Pass to one of us!" he shouted. He said that like 3 times, but Rain didn't listen. He just kept passing to me and saying things like, "Don't feel pressured," and "You will make a basket if you're not afraid of missing." It did make me feel a little better about sucking so bad, but I still didn't do any better. Then, about halfway through the game, something seriously embarrassing happened. Rain had the ball and was furiously running around the court trying to shake off the entire opposing team that was crowding around him. He was about to make a shot, but the team was too close to him and he couldn't even pass to one of his own teammates. So he decided to take it out further to try and shake off the team trying to steal the ball from him again. He whipped around and ran, dribbling towards the free throw line, and guess who was right there, not paying attention, like 2 inches away from him? That's right, it was me. Rain had spun around and ran right into me. He actually ended up accidentally tackling me to the ground and losing the ball. I groaned in pain, having hit the back of my head. I looked to see Rain lying on top of me. He was watching me curiously, lips parted. I'm sure he was about to ask if I was all right, but just when he opened his mouth, my body did something I seriously didn't want it to do. It's embarrassing to admit it, but I actually got an erection. God, I died. Rain noticed it, I could tell. He froze before speaking, and I blushed harder than I think I had in my entire life. Rain got off of me and pulled me up, pushing me off the court. "I think you hit your head really hard, Cole," he said very loudly. "I think you should go to the nurse." I resisted like an idiot. I'm fine," I said softly, but he just pushed me toward the gym door. "Seriously, Cole, I tackled you pretty hard," he said, still loudly. "I think you should go to the nurse." Just then, I realized what he was trying to do. He was making sure I got out of there before anyone else noticed what had happened to me. So I put my hand on my head and got out of there quick as possible. On my way, I heard Nate say, "Wow, pretty embarrassing to land on top of another guy, huh, Rain?"
"It was an accident," Rain replied. "I don't make big deals out of accidents."
I think I might have been lying in the nurse's office for at least half the day. I wasn't paying attention to the time. Really, I didn't care if I stayed there for the rest of my life. I never wanted to show my face to Rain ever again. I lay in the white bed with the mint-colored blanket pulled up to my chest, completely in shock. Not only was that the first time it had ever happened in public, but from another guy was unspeakable. I closed my eyes and tried to think of something positive. I remember hearing how sometimes wrestlers got erections from each other by accident, so it's not necessarily that you're attracted to someone to get one, right? Like Rain said, it was an accident. I opened my eyes just as Rain came into the room. I gasped and pulled the blanket over my head, but he just yanked it down again. I was nearly crying from shame. "I'm so sorry, Rain," I muttered. "I can't even explain myself, it's so bad." To my surprise, Rain smiled.
"Why are you saying sorry?" he asked. "You can't control what your body does, but it does make me wonder a few things."
I frowned. "Like what?" I asked, unsure if I even wanted to know or not. Rain shrugged.
"Well," he said slowly, "I'm wondering if you're straight."
I furrowed my brow. "Of course I am," I said loudly, sitting up. "I'm Catholic. I'd go to hell if I was anything but straight." Rain put his hand on my shoulder.
"Well, I'm not going to accuse you of being in denial, but I will say that it's still a possibility."
I found it very hard to breathe now. You're just trying to scare me," I said. I was, too. I was terrified. Rain shook his head.
"I would never want to scare you like this," he said. "I'd only scare you by sneaking up on you or putting my cold hands under your shirt."
I sighed. "Gee, thanks. That makes me feel so much better," I said sarcastically. Rain shook his head and pushed me to lie down.
"I'm not trying to scare you,"
he said softly as he bent down and brought his face very close to mine. I couldn't move for some reason, and I was feeling very hot and dizzy again.
"I'm just saying there's a possibility."
That was when he did something completely unexpected. He kissed me. He placed his hand gently on my cheek and gave me my first kiss. I was even more terrified now, and half of me wanted to hit him. Unfortunately, the other half kissed him right back. I even put my arms around him. I don't know why I did it. It was like my body was under someone else's control. Rain held the kiss for quite a while, then broke it very slowly. I let my arms slide from his torso and at my sides. I was speechless. Rain smiled at me, looking like he'd just won $1 million.
You engaged,
he said simply. I furrowed my brow. That was instinctive. I didn't mean it, I said, trying to glare at him. I could tell he thought that it was more cute than intimidating.
We'll see, Cole,
he said, and he was about to leave. I sat up quickly. Wait, I said, voice cracking again. He turned around and gave me the most affectionate smile I've ever seen. It stopped me in my tracks. I couldn't even speak.
What is it?
He asked calmly after about a minute. I cleared my throat. Are you straight? I asked, almost under my breath. Rain sighed, smiling.
I won't tell you unless you tell me,
he said, then chuckled and left. I sighed and lay back down. I was an idiot, that much was certain. I actually stayed in the nurse's office until I was sure school was over. After the last bell rang, I left to go for the bus. I got on it and got a decent seat in the front next to this girl holding a shoebox. I didn't ask her what was in it, though. I knew she'd think I was a freak. When I got home, I went on into my room and flopped on my bed, face smushed into my pillow. I sort of let out a loud groan into it, which sounded muffled. I lay there for a few minutes and then looked over at my journal, which was still on the floor from last night. I stared at it for a long while, wondering if I should write in it. I wanted to write about what had happened today, but I was afraid my mother would find it and read it. If she read that sort of thing in my journal, she'd probably take me to an exorcist. I flipped over onto my back and stared at my ceiling. It was getting hard to breathe as I thought about that kiss. It made it even harder to breathe when I thought about it and then looked over at one of my crosses. I felt so ashamed and wished I could just forget what had happened. I lay on my bed until my mother called me into the kitchen for dinner. I sat down at the table as Mom served my dad and I chicken. I really hated chicken, but I never complained about it when we had it, and we didn't even have a dog for me to feed it to. I had no choice but to eat it. While we ate, Dad talked aimlessly about his day. He worked in one of those high-class businesses where the workers sat in a little cubicle with about 2 feet of workspace. He made a lot of money. He had to anyway because Mom didn't work.
I was sitting there on my computer working on that paperwork the boss assigned to me when Tom came waltzing in with a stack of papers and saying, "Hey, Leeson, the boss expects me to fill this out by noon. You think you can help me out?" I swear he thinks he's so high and mighty because he has a first-class cubicle.
My father ranted. My mother just nodded, listening and eating. She told him about her day and how the snails were eating at her garden. She looked at me after she was done talking. I was kind of picking at my food, having eaten very little so far. "Cole, why haven't you touched your food?" she asked me. I blinked and looked at her. I'm just not that hungry," I replied quietly. My mom didn't like that at all. "Cole, I'm concerned," she said. "Today I got a call from your principal saying you only went to first period today and weren't in any of your other classes. Is something bothering you?" I was blushing. I knew it. I just hoped Mom wouldn't think anything of it. "I was in the nurse's office all day," I said, voice shaking. "During basketball I got knocked down and hit my head really hard. I went to the nurse for the rest of the day, but I still don't feel all that well." Mom nodded, seeming to believe me. Well, it was the truth after all. I just left out the whole part about Rain. "Perhaps you should skip dinner tonight then," said Mom. "Go to bed early so you don't end up with some kind of brain damage." I nodded, getting up from the table. At least it gave me an excuse to not eat the chicken. I went back to my room and got into my pajamas, lying in bed. Then I sighed, realizing I forgot to turn off the light. I got up again and passed a mirror I had on my wall. I froze and walked back to it, looking at my face. I was still blushing. My eyes moved from my pink cheeks to my lips, and I blinked, touching them. I looked closer and saw just a faint sparkle. It appeared to be some kind of lip gloss. Rain had been wearing lip gloss when he kissed me.